Welcome to Friday Q&A. Thank you guys so much for the response to last week's video. I think it's been my most viewed Friday Q&A so far, so you guys rock, that's awesome. A few other videos this week went over pretty well, especially the Randy Rhoads RRT1 pedal. It was great to see all the Randy Rhoads freaks coming out of the woodwork and sharing the enthusiasm for the tribute album with me, which is awesome. So I might make that a little series going forward where I just talk about albums that really influenced me and hopefully track down pieces of gear which I guess helped form that particular sound. So if you've got questions for next week's Q&A, please get them in the comments below, but we're going to dive into this week's questions. There's not as many this week. I've been pretty busy and there also weren't as many questions, but there's a couple that I really want to get into depth with, so let's do that now. Would I consider doing a review of the PRS MT15? Definitely. That amp looks like my dream lunchbox amp. I really like Alter Bridge, and I love Mark Tremonti's tones, especially with Alter Bridge. I know that he's kind of like a Bogner Uberschall Recto guy as well, and they are two of my favorite guitar sounds of all time. And if that thing can do that, then I would really like to check one out. So I'll have to hit up some of my mates that work at some of the local shops and see if I can loan one. They're pretty well priced as well, from what I understand, just a little over 1,000 Australian dollars, but hopefully they come out with like a 50 or 100 watt head version, because that thing would be pretty brutal and pretty awesome. What strings do I use on my STR? My STR is right here, as you can see. Got the ragdoll sticker on the back. I use Elixir 10 to 52s on this. The reason I like the Elixirs is obviously because they last a lot longer, but their D string is slightly heavier. Instead of being like a 30 gauge, I think it's a 32, which I like, and I've got it in drop C. It was set up by Tim at MT, so it's had a Plex setup, which it didn't need a whole lot of modification to the actual guitar. It pretty much came out of the box, like fret levels and all that kind of stuff, more or less perfect, but because I play in drop C, it just sort of needed to really be eased in. So yeah, 10 to 52, that's about as light as I ever want to go, and to be honest, I would much rather use like a set of 11 to 60s or something like that, but 10 to 52s are just easy to find. So a lot of my philosophy with the gear I use as well is like, if something breaks, it's got to be easy to fix. So, you know, for this guitar, 10 to 52s, I find you can walk into basically any guitar store anywhere in the world and get a set of 10 to 52s very easily. And I try to base my whole philosophy around that thing. It's like, if something goes wrong, just try to make it as standard as possible and easy to fix. So yeah, Elixir, the nano webs, I prefer those to the polys. How do you feel about Jackson guitars? I remember for the longest time I wanted a Jackson, especially a soloist, mostly because all my favorite like 80s players played Jacksons, you know, 80s, 90s as well, you know, Dave and Marty from Megadeth, Warren DeMartini, I guess technically he played a Charvel, but heaps of people seem to use Jacksons, and I just thought the shark tooth inlays were super cool. I love the soloist shape, I love the headstock, and the Randy Rhoads V shape as well. I remember that was like my dream metal guitar, and that was probably when I was about 15. So I really wanted a Jackson, and I just, you know, you just couldn't sort of find them as easily or whatever, and I guess I kind of fell in love with different guitar styles after that as well. I really liked Hamer guitars and PRS guitars as well. So yeah, it was sort of like a teenage fantasy that didn't really grow with me, but I've played some pretty amazing Jacksons since then. I reckon if I was ever going to get a Jackson, I'd get a Kelly, because that's sort of my preferred shape now, and also Tim Kelly from Slaughter was wicked, so that would be a really cool tie-in. I just really like that kind of shape that's going on there. So yeah, I'm like in no hurry to buy or own a Jackson guitar, but I have come around full circle from being like obsessed with them to being like, nah, I don't like Jacksons, they're lame, to, you know, getting a newfound appreciation of what they do. And yeah, I mean, to me, they're like synonymous with the term super strat, and I don't mind the odd super strat, so maybe one day I'll actually have to get a legit Jackson. Do I still have the Laney GH100L? I don't. I actually sold it to one of my students. He saw the video that I did with it, and he wanted to buy a tube amp. So he's talking to me, he's like, oh, I really want to get a head, and you know, I want something that can kind of do the Marshall thing, but I don't want to spend a whole lot of money. And I basically just said, look dude, I've got this 100 watt Laney, here's the video, if you like it, let me know and we can work something out. So he bought that off me and was super stoked. It was really funny actually. He took it home and plugged it in and called me like 15 minutes later. He was like, oh dude, I think I've blown the amp up. And he'd just blown a fuse. I think it was like a dicky power socket in his house or something like that. So we sorted that out, and now he's stoked with it. So it's still sort of like part of the extended family, but I just, I've got so many other amps, and I've got the Fractal gear, and it was sort of being wasted on me, that amp. So I would much rather it go to somebody who's going to use it sort of every day, and hopefully keep them inspired, because I think they're a great sounding head. And if you want an 800 style sound on a budget, great place to start. Chuck a Tube Screamer or a Super Overdrive in front of it, and it can do a lot of stuff, and it can do the brutal metal stuff as well if you set it right. So yeah, unfortunately I don't own the Laney anymore, but I guess if I ever wanted to do a video with it again, I can just call this guy up and borrow it for a few days. Do I prefer the dual rec over the Soldano tone? As you guys are probably aware, recently there was a Tone Talk episode, I think, where Mike Soldano talks about how Mesa Boogie literally just copied the SLO preamp for the dual rectifier. So to me, the Recto it shares a lot of the same DNA as a Soldano, but they do very, very different things. Obviously the power amp section in both of them is completely different, and part of the magic of a dual rectifier is the tube power section, especially with the tube rectification, because you just get that like huge, really, really, really almost slow attack, big blooming transients with the rectifier. You can hear me getting excited about it. Whereas a Soldano does a totally, totally different thing. It can do the liquid lead thing, but it's a much tighter, much more like punchy amp than the Rectos. So you can get them to sound very, very similar, but because of the differences in the power section, they are different beasts. To me, the rectifier is it's just this like savage, untamed animal that you really have to know how to dial them in, and you have to know how to use them in a mix. Otherwise they can totally disappear. You scoop the mids out in your bedroom and you're like, yeah, this thing's great, and you take it on stage and you can't hear anything. So if you know how to dial a rectifier in, and you've got the right guitar on the kind of right setup, and you're playing the right style of music for it as well. I don't think they work with every style of music that you want to play, but they've got their niche. And for me, for what I like to do, the dual recto it does something to me. It really, really makes my hair stand up on my arm when I play a good one. I've got a good one, the old Rev G. And the Soldano does the same thing, but for different reasons. And for the style of music that I'm playing, especially the ragdoll stuff, the rectifier as the primary tone kind of just works, whereas the Soldano is slightly less appropriate. But having said that, the Soldano and the Jet City, they do that one sound better than anything else out there. That to me, I just always think of Warren DeMartini, like his tone in the 80s. That to me is the like ultimate Soldano style sound. Rat, Lay It Down, that riff, that sound to me is one of my favorite guitar sounds of all time. I don't know if you use a Soldano on it, but I just feel like I get really close to that sound anytime I plug a Soldano in. So really depends on the style of music that you want to play. They're both really inspiring amps. The Soldano is definitely going to work in a rock setting a lot more than a rectifier is, but if you're going for like a hard rock metal kind of thing, nothing can do what a recto can do. So yeah, like a rectifier does what it does, a Soldano does what it does, and if you want to sort of really get them to do what they do the best, they're going to sound very different, although there is plenty of overlap in there. So my advice would be buy both and blend them. What's wrong with my other guitars? You've got quite a few adorning the background of all the videos. Yeah, I own a lot of guitars. It's an obsession. But twofold question. This one's really good, and I'm going to spend quite a lot of time on this. One thing that I kind of settled on early was that for doing demo videos, I wanted to try to keep the guitars that I use fairly consistent across them. So I've probably got like, 4 or 5 guitars that I use regularly. My Malmsteen Strat now, my 70 Strat, which is hanging up on the wall. This guy, the STR, I use a lot, and my black PRS. The black PRS to me is great for the hard rock and the metal tones, and then the STR, even though I've still got it in drop C and it does chunky stuff really well, I use that for sort of more of the like rock to classic rock kind of things. And then the nice thing about the STR, it's got this H90 pickup in it. Somebody else asked as well, what pickups do I have in this guitar, which I didn't answer in that strings question earlier. So these are made by Martin A. Smith, and he is a local manufacturer here in Perth. His stuff's really, really amazing. You can see the H90 there, it's pretty cool. Already plenty of grime on this guitar, and then a vintage style humbucker in that guitar. So that one's got more of a vintage thing going on than the PRS. They're like the two main humbucker guitars, and then the Malmsteen Strat which is just so comfortable to play for me. Really sounds pretty as well. And then the 70 Strat with the Sir pickups in it, I think is a great sounding Strat style guitar as well. So I use those for most of the stuff that I do, because that way, sort of like if people are watching the channel, you kind of know what you're getting. You know, oh, it's Leon, he's going to be playing a PRS or that STR thing or some kind of Strat. And then that way, it's like if I'm demoing a Marshall one week and I'm demoing the Axe FX the next week, or I'm demoing like a Stereotone or a Mesa or something, there's that common factor in there of kind of sticking to the same guitars. Another factor as well is that these are the guitars that I gig with the most, so a lot of the time they're the ones that are actually like playable and have strings on them. But I do have a lot of other guitars, and what that question inspired me to do over the week was to actually get some of them out and make them more playable, because a lot of the time it's, because I've got so many guitars, it's like if a jack or something goes bad or a pot burns out, I'll just put the guitar on the wall and I'll start playing another one, and then it'll sit there for like a year or 2 years, and I'm like, oh, I got to get onto that, I got to get onto that. So I got onto it this week. I'll show you a couple of cool guitars. This is one which I think is pretty cool. I'll play some clips later after this as well. This is a Hamer. Come on, focus. There it is. Hamer Vintage S. And it has got a Floyd Rose. Actually, it's got a Schala brand. Hamer branded Schala Floyd Rose style trem. Or locking trem, I should say. And the cool thing about this guitar, it is well, it's not one, it's a book matched pair. So it's two pieces of solid flame maple. So you can see the back and the front. I don't know if you can see the join in there. But yeah, it's crazy. It's solid maple, which is pretty rare. One of the reasons I bought this guitar on eBay like 7 or 8 years ago, just on a whim, because I wanted more and more Hamers. I love Hamers. And you can see there, it's got crazy bird's eye on the neck as well. And the fingerboard is Palfero, so I believe what they call Mexican rosewood. It's got Spertzl locking machine heads. It's got the Schala locking bridge. And this to me is this is my alternative to a Sir guitar. I put a Sir SSV in there, and then I've got a HS2 or a HS3 in the neck, something like that. So, my buddy Troy owns a really beautiful Sir, and this is a very different kind of thing, but it's kind of, to me, it's sort of like Sir spec. It's like a Strat with fancy maple and a really nice fretboard. And the thing that's interesting about it is it has really tiny frets, so it's got vintage style fret wire, which is interesting for essentially a Super Strat style guitar, and it's like a 7/8 Strat body shape. So this, the bridge humbucker wasn't working, and these originally came with like a little active preamp in them, which this guitar just didn't have in it, so I wired it up just to be kind of like standard Super Strat sort of spec. I'll play a little clip with this in a second. So that's Super Strat number 1, and a lot of the time, like, I've got all these guitars that have locking bridges, and I hate them. Like, nothing against Floyd Roses, I just don't use them, and they're, I find them annoying to tune. And like I was saying earlier, where it's like, I want to be absolutely idiot-proof, so I don't want to break a string at a gig and have the whole guitar go out of tune. Another one, which, hey, again, it's got a locking bridge on it, is this. This is a PV Wolfgang. Funny story with this one, when I bought it, I thought I was buying one of the newer EVHs. I didn't even look at the headstock, and then I got it home and I was like, oh, this is a PV, but I think it's a special. Is it? Wolfgang Special, yeah, and it's funny because I put googly eyes on it. It's a kind of dorky looking guitar, but I love the necks on these Wolfgangs. I love that it is the sort of old school style Floyd, which you can't pull up, so I've just blocked it back. Out of all my Floyd equipped guitars, I think I like this one the most. And yeah, it's just nice. It's kind of like the Telly from hell. The pickups in it sound pretty good. I had to rewire them because I don't know what was going on with the original owner, how he had it set up, but it was kind of, yeah, just not set up right. And this, the jack was stuff, so this week I went through and I rewired that, which I was pretty stoked to do because it's a really good sounding guitar. Perfect when I want to try to be Eddie Van Halen. And then I normally do that for about 5 minutes and realize I'm not Eddie Van Halen and give up. The only thing I don't like about this is where the volume pot is. When I'm playing, it's like my hand hits that, so I might move that at some point, but that's super cool. Alright, another guitar with a locking bridge on it. This you guys have seen this one before. This is a Hamer Chaparral. So check that out. 24 frets, ebony fretboard, these awesome boomerang inlays. And this has had a paint job by Perry Ormsby from Ormsby Guitars. It's sort of like a Soviet fighter pilot sort of thing. I bought the guitar like this, so he told me that he painted the guitar for a client who then went on to sell it. But yeah, this is, these Hamers, man, they're amazing, amazing guitars. Like for the time, you know, Super Strat again, which is pretty cool, but it's got a beautiful set neck with sort of like a carved heel. This is my Jackson. I was talking about Jackson guitars earlier, and I always like the graphics that they had in a lot of the soloists. So this scratches the itch anytime I see a Jackson. Yeah, Hamer Chaparral, really, really cool. This one, the middle pickup wasn't working, and the wiring was just, I'd done the wiring and it was pretty horrendous, so I went back through and rewired it, and this has some really sweet clean tones out of it. So there's that. While I'm on the topic of other guitars, what else? I got to get this one out for some more demos, actually. I did a bunch of demos with this. This is my PRS McCarty. Check out the top on that. It is one piece. I haven't seen another one-piece top PRS in the flesh. I've seen photos of them. It's a one-piece top, one-piece back. You know what? I got a gig tonight. I'm going to take this guitar. I'm going to restring it, and yeah, I think that's a good excuse to get it out. And yeah, just classic cherry sunburst, which is one of my favorite types of sunburst, and I've used this guitar a lot on tour. I took it with me to the States when we did the States in 2013. We went for 10 weeks, which was, man, that is a story for another time as well. That was a crazy, crazy tour. But yeah, we were in America for 10 weeks, and this was the only guitar I took with me, and it absolutely slayed. It was great. Actually, I didn't end up taking it home. What happened was, on that tour, I met my now wife, and you know, long story, we started dating while we were over there, and I basically said, like, hey, I'm going to be back, and to prove that I'm going to be back, I'm going to leave my guitar with you, and you can have it. So technically this is her guitar, which I gave to her, but she lets me use it for gigs, which is very, very nice of her. So I got to get the McCarty out for more stuff. What else have we got going on here, which is just crazy? This thing, the Dan Electro sitar. Yep, that's legit. That's really, really cool. And more Hamers. Jeez, I've got a lot of Hamer guitars. One of the coolest though is this. I need to bust this one out. Again, you can see the common thread, broken strings. This is a Hamer Special. I bought this off eBay because it was selling with, can you see that? Yeah, cracked headstock. And it's got the really slim early 90s Hamer neck. It almost feels like an Ibanez Wizard, which is funny because it's such a cool like 50s style looking guitar. But the P90s in this sound amazing, and I've done a lot of ragdoll gigs with this. And if you listen to our Here Today EP, I use this guitar a lot for extra layers. The song Overnight Sensation is this guitar straight into a Marshall DSL, and it's wicked. I really, really like it. Very, very sweet playable guitar. I've done so many gigs on this thing. I used to gig this into a Blues Junior with a cover band that I played with, and I'd just have a tube screamer, and that was the whole rig, and it ruled. It was really good. What else? The grand tour of cool guitars. This is actually another guitar that I need to put some work into. This is one of my favorites. This is the one, man. This is an Ibanez RG 550, an original one from 1990. Yes, 1990. Yeah, crazy guitar. I've got a Duncan Custom and a Damasio Liquefier in there, and yeah, they're not quite wired in properly, so I've got to spend some time with that one. And what else? So a lot of cool Super Strats, as you can see. What else did I want to show you guys? And this ties into the next question, so this is a two-in-one. A few of you have asked me this question over the weeks. What's the deal with that Explorer sitting on the wall? Guess what? It's not an Explorer, it is, come on focus, it's a Hamer Standard. And this guitar is awesome. I'm going to restring it and play some clips with it for you guys, but this I bought from Jackson's Rare Guitars in 2009, I think. So when I was still at uni, I did a summer scholarship program, and they flew me to Sydney to go and give a talk. This is back in my academic days doing mathematics. So I went to Sydney for a couple of days and went to this conference and gave a talk and all that kind of stuff, and presented like a little paper based around what I'd done, and they paid me to do the project, so I was getting, you know, maybe a few $100s a week over a couple of weeks. But I walked into Jackson's Rare Guitars, and I saw this Hamer, and I was like, oh my god, they have a Hamer Standard, and it's Corinna, and it's got this like crazy flame on the side. I was like, that's a cool guitar. There's no way that I can afford it, because they're always like, you know, $5 or $6 grand. And yeah, it was a lot cheaper than I expected. And they had this, and then they had a Hamer Special that was also Corinna. So like one dog ear P90, super cool guitar. And I played both of them, and they were both around the same price. And it was a tough decision, but you know, of course, I wanted an Explorer style guitar, so I ended up buying this. It's currently got a Duncan 78 in there, so like the evenly voiced harmonics pickup, and then a jazz in the neck. So I'm going to put some strings on this, and I'm going to play some clips with all of these guitars that I've just showed you guys, and then we'll do the lick of the week, and that actually finishes all the questions. So that was a really, really, really long answer. If you guys think I should do clips with different guitars and stuff like that, please let me know, because it's always nice to get that kind of feedback about these kind of things. One more as well. This is probably the coolest guitar that's sitting around in here, which I definitely need to do more clips with. It's a Firebird 5, and I've put the who makes these, Steinberg, their super cool 40-to-1, 20-to-1 ratio tuners, whatever they are. But yeah, anytime I want to try to be Johnny Winter, which is often because Johnny's amazing and I love his stuff, the Firebird Explorer. So, and that's just scratching the surface. So if you've watched this video and you know where I live, please don't rob me, because I like all these guitars. Let's have a listen to them. Alright, here it is. Hamer Standard, Corinna, I think it's a 2008 model. I just put some strings on. I put 10 to 50, not 10 to 56s, 10 to 46s on it. I'm in D. And it sounds great. I haven't played this guitar for ages. I've got to bust it out more. Check it out. These strings have to stretch in, so I apologize if that was slightly out of tune. Let's have a listen to some of the other guitars. Alright, thank you guys for watching all of that stuff of me noodling away on guitars. One lick that I wanted to have a look at, this is something that I do all the time, so I figured I would show it to you guys. Let's play in the key of E. So we will use the E Dorian Blues. Basically it's going to translate to these strings and frets on the top string, 12, 14, 15 on the top three strings. Do that in the other order, so it's 14, 15, 12. And then land on 14 on the D. So this little blues box, you know, you can call it the Dorian Blues, you can call it like the Dimebag blues box or the Paul Gilbert blues box, whatever you want to call it. But this to me is just, you play in here and it sounds like kind of 80s rock, metal, shred sort of stuff, you know? So anyway, here's the lick. It goes like so. We're starting on the 15th and we're pulling off 15, 14, 12. And then we're going to hit 15 on the B. Then we'll go back to 12 on the E. Let's just zoom in a little bit on that so we can see it. And you're pretty much going to repeat the same pattern on the B and the G. Of course, we want to hit 14 when we go to the D string. So this is the basis of it. You can practice this. But then what we're going to do is connect it like so. So the sequence actually becomes 15, 14, 12 on the E, 15 on the B, 12 on the E, then pick 15, 14, 12 on the B. So you get... And then you repeat that on the G and the B string, on B and G. And pretty much do this, the first half of it on the G and the B, but then slide to finish off from 12 to 13, so we're sliding from the minor third to the major third, and then hitting the root note right there. So this is what you get when you put it all together really slowly. Like I said, as a primer, practice this. Then the next primer would be and put it all together. That was a little bit sloppy, I apologize. At full speed, whatever full speed is for you, for me to be about it. So you do normal pentatonic stuff. I'll just zoom out again. Normal pentatonic stuff. And it's so aggressive, it's so cool. And it works, you know, even... You don't have to blaze it. Put it together with that Michael Schenker lick we did a few weeks ago. It's so much fun. I literally, this is like one of my go-tos. I use it, if you've watched the channel, you know I play this lick a lot. So that's our lick of the week. Thank you guys so much for watching all of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I will see you next time. Get your questions in so I can answer more questions. Cheers.